and welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast week in mobile games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. We're going to do it a bit different this week, though. we're going to discuss the year's trends. I'm Craig Chapple, head of content at PocketGamer.biz. With me, as ever, our news editor Aaron Astle. Aaron, how you doing? Excited for the festive period?
I am. I'm getting into the spirit a bit now. The eagle-eyed viewers will see the lovely decorations behind me, including the kind of flickering tree, which you can't really see at the minute, but it is behind me. I still haven't actually put up my proper tree yet, just to break the immersion. Everything Christmassy is within frame.
You're running late, Aaron. It's too late to put up the tree, surely.
Yeah. I've been very good, actually. I think I'm totally sorted on Christmas presents now. I've still got wrapping to do, but I've bought everything that I need to get. But I've been so preoccupied on getting organised there that I haven't done all the decoration stuff yet. But, hopefully get a solid 10 days out of having the tree up.
Solid 10 days. Story for everyone. I have a real Christmas tree this year, but I had vowed never to do this ever again because 2 or 3 years ago, I had my first ever real Christmas tree in the house. I've always had a fake one or none. And it was lovely. It was fun, put all the decorations on it. Best time. And then one day, I'm laying down on the sofa and we notice this is horror. This is an absolute horror, by the way. We noticed that there was a couple bugs on the floor. They're squirming under the tree. I was like, what is that? I didn't really know, so I cleared them up. And then it kind of happened again. And I was like, this isn't right. Something's wrong here. On the tree, I didn't know what they were at the time. On the tree were growing just so many bugs. It was awful. I think they're called, I don't know how to pronounce it, aphids or aphids. And so they live on a tree and they live off the sap. So if they go off the tree, they die. But they were living off this tree that we had put in some water as well, this Christmas tree. It was the most horrifying thing I think I've ever witnessed in my life. And then I had to deal with it. So I didn't really know how to deal with that. So what I did was I took off all the decorations, which was awful in itself. And then I picked up this Christmas tree. I'd lay it up with my coat and gloves. I was very dramatic. And I walked outside. I felt like I was in the film Alien right at the end where Sigourney Weaver is singing a nursery rhyme to herself. Because she's so scared. I felt like that, even though this bug's going to do absolutely nothing to me. And I just picked it up. And my garden is quite long. And so I just put it at the end of the garden and left it there for a month. Because I was like, I'm making sure that they're dead before I go anywhere near this tree and deal with it. But that was awful. So, and then this year, my friend was just I'm never going to do it again. I was about to put up the fake one. And then my friend was like, oh, my dad has some trees. Do you want one? And very quickly, for some reason, I was like, yeah, all right. So far, so good. But I keep looking at it. Awful.
Yeah. Sounds it.
Right. Before we really kick off, as ever, we've got Pocket Gamer Connects coming back. Pocket Gamer Connects London, which is the big one, January 19th to 20th. And we'll have an App Business Summit as well on the 19th and a Transmedia Summit on the 20th, which will also happen to be 2 industry trends that we might go into. And it's going to be a fantastic show. Great. It'll be about 3,000 people or so in town. And that's the aim. And it's the perfect place to network with other people in the mobile games industry and learn about the biggest trends, kind of really kick off the year right. So, without further ado, firstly, I'm going to kick off with some stats. And Newzoo has happily today, would you believe, they have released their recap. And the industry, according to Newzoo, the global games market is expected to reach $197 billion in 2025. That's a plus 7.5% year-on-year growth. Then mobile is expected to generate $108 billion, which is 7.7% year-on-year growth. Console, $45 billion, 4.2% year-on-year growth. PC, $43 billion, which is up 10.4%. It's quite a lot. Interestingly, that doesn't include mobile ad revenue. That is consumer spending. That is a very significant portion of revenue to leave out. So I think when you see the global games market is worth this, it's actually worth a lot more. So those are some really cool stats there. And then from App Magic, I took a very quick look at the top games, top grossing games, most downloaded games, and the top publishers of the year. So I guess I'll go through the top 5 grossing games. Number 1, Honor of Kings from Tencent. Number 2, Last War Survival from First Fun / Funfly, whatever they're called now. Number 3, Roblox from Roblox Corporation. Number 4, Whiteout Survival from Century Games. Number 5, Royal Match from Dream Games. And just as a quick breakdown of the top 10, 4 of the top publishers are from China, 2 from the US, and the rest Turkey, Sweden, Japan, and Israel. Of the top 10 most downloaded, they all had over 100 million downloads. Number 1 was Blockbuster by Hungry Studio. Second was Roblox. Third was Free Fire by Garena. Fourth was Subway Surfers from Miniclip. 5 was Pizza Ready by Supercent. Top grossing publishers, top 5, Tencent, Century Games, Scopely, Dream Games, and Funfly. There's a lot of Chinese companies in there, but it's a bit of a mix. Top download publishers, Azure Games, Miniclip, Baby Bass, Voodoo, Say Games, which is quite a mix. Yeah, I thought that was all very interesting. I think the one thing you can see, which we'll go into in a second, Aaron, is how China in particular is doing very well. Their top publishers, and then you can see Turkey kind of in there, Israel, and European studios are doing pretty well. I think there was a surprising lack of at least headquartered companies in the US. Obviously, you have your Roblox and your Scopely, but elsewhere it's kind of dominated, really, I think, by others. So, Aaron, you've got a big look at the new games of the year. What have you got?
Yeah, so sort of similar way to what you were saying with the kind of biggest games overall. Yeah, very like Asia dominant, which is similar to last year as well. I took a look at the biggest games of 2024, and all the top 10 were from Asia. A bit more variety this year, but to go through, so like the winners. So Century Games King Shot was the biggest new mobile game this year, at almost 600 million. Team Jade's Delta Force came second at about 432 million. Bandai Namco's SD Gundam G Generation Eternal was third at 300 million. So those top 3 are all from Asia, China, and Japan. Abby as well, so that they ranked 4th with Archero 2, which made just over 175 million. And then we bent the rules slightly, and said that 5th place is Rollick's Colour Block Jam at 148.2 million. Technically, this one did release in 2024, but at Magic estimates suggest it only made about 250,000 last year, and then this year it's made nearly 150 million. So it felt kind of like it deserved to be here. It's really become its own massive thing in 2025. And yes, those are the kind of top 5. I guess looking at some of the broader trends across these new games. So overall, the top 10 made less collective revenue than in 2024. So it's 27% down. Top 10 made 2.2 billion versus last year's top 10 making 3 billion. But at the same time, this year's list was a lot kind of closer, the revenue that they achieved. Whereas last year was kind of carried by some heavy hitters like Dungeon and Fighter in China, Pokemon TCG Pocket, Love and Deep Space. Games like those kind of carried the list. Dungeon and Fighter made over 1 billion within half a year, basically. Pokemon Pocket skyrocketed up the charts. That didn't come out until the 30th of October. Whereas, like this year, so the top 5 all released in H1. So obviously they had more time to accrue revenue over the course of this year. And overall, like across the top 10, they all kind of ranked closer. All of them made at least 100 million. So I think there's an argument to be made that even though, those top 10 collectively made 27% less, you could say that the result still kind of reflects a healthier industry in the kind of distribution of that revenue. And say like the top 10 all made at least 100 million. And 2 of them were from outside of Asia, that being Disney Solitaire and Colour Block Jam. Whereas last year's list, all the top 10 were from Asia. The highest game outside of Asia was 12. And I'll say there were a few games that made crazy sums of money. 100 million is still a crazy sum, by mobile standards. Then the $1 billion games, there were some real like phenomenal successes in 2024. Whereas this year has been a little bit more fairly distributed, I would say.
So I'm just trying to look at. I was going to look at the top games from last year to see which ones are still around in the top 10. So did
Yeah.
they stick around to be like grow and be in the top 10 grossing, which is quite a tall order, to be fair. And
Yeah.
out of those, Pokemon Trading Card Game was one of the year's top grossing games. Casual Fighter was not.
Interesting.
I mean, not to say that they're not still making a lot of money. I'm just saying in the top 10. And I don't think any of the others.
Some of the other big ones were like Love and Deep Space, Endless Zone Zero, AFK Journey, Wuthering Waves.
Yeah, I mean, they're all doing really well, but they're not like top 10. And then, but we did. I'm just seeing like we did have some shout outs right last year, so it's like other latecomers that we did like this year. So 2023 latecomer Last War was this year's so far. This is December 18th, the second top grossing game. So I guess some of these like big releases actually fall away pretty quick, which for the ones especially that rely on China revenue, that seems to be quite common. That games have a massive launch and then they kind of disappear quite quickly. It's quite rare to stick around for a long time in China, and the others at least not breaking through yet necessarily to the top 10. So I guess when you see these, we don't know necessarily that these are going to be the ones that stick around. I actually, as much as people say the charts don't change, I think they've changed gradually over the years a bit. Well, see, I think King Shot has, as it were, has a good shot of breaking the top 10. It might have actually been very close looking at it. But then, like, Century Games already has Whiteout Survival as the number 4 top grosser. I think King Shot's even better. Delta Force was an interesting one. Tencent has really kind of cracked that part. I mean, they already had with PUBG Mobile, right? But kind of cracked a new hit at least with that one. So in the shooter genre as well, which is pretty tough. So congrats to them. And then obviously, as we've got on here as well, Valorant Mobile there, which I think you said was the Tencent claims like the top new release in China.
Yeah, in China. Yeah.
Really interesting article. Definitely everyone should check it out. The top new.
Thank you. And I guess as well, another one that's kind of made the honourable mentions 2 years in a row now is Royal Kingdom. That was another kind of late 2024 game. So we mentioned it in last year's article that it hadn't made the top 10, but you know it was off to a reasonable start. And then so we kind of mentioned it again in this article because it was a 2024 game, but you know it has had a big year in 2025, over 300 million. So it's a bigger launch year than Royal Match had, and without really cannibalising Royal Match revenue. Yeah, there's certainly like newer games that are sticking around, I think.
I feel like with Royal Kingdom, I don't know. I'm just waiting to see like how that looks UA versus revenue. Because they spent a lot on the celebrity marketing campaign, and then they're obviously spending a tremendous amount on user acquisition. So we'll see. All right, thanks for that, Aaron. So to kind of go with one of those themes, we're going to go through a few other trends now. And one of those trends this year, which is sometimes these trends are just the same every year, but one of the trends from this year is basically kind of the growth of China's games industry and Asia overall. There's also the emergence of some Southeast Asian companies, particularly in Vietnam, because I think one of the top new games was Screwdom by, I want to say, iCame. And they, what did that make? Over 100 mil or something, 150 mil. And then, so that's a Vietnamese publisher. With just an idea there that they're on the rise. And I think there's 2 maybe in the top 10 most downloaded publishers. So yeah, if you look at the top grossing most downloaded games and publishers, another come from China. You've got your Tencent, your NetEase, your MiHoYo, your Funfly, your Century Games, and others below that tier that'll be around, like Lilith Games, Default Games, Microfun. And they are dominating some of their categories. Century Games and First Fun slash Funfly. They dominate the 4X strategy genre now. We mentioned their King Shot, Last War, and Whiteout Survival, kind of some of the most top grossing games in the world. And they've actually really managed, they've not just dominated the category, right? They've actually managed to propel what is a mature genre that used to be dominated a long time ago by, say, AMZ. Then you had like a Game of Thrones, etc. come in, Star Trek Fleet Command, and they've just like grown that significantly, that genre, by revenue. And they've kind of done that through the integration of, amongst other things, casual gameplay. And we'll go into one of the main reasons for China's success in a minute. potentially. And then you've got your Microfun, which is now dominating the merge space. So they've got Gossip Harbour, which does really well. That was a space previously led by Finnish studio Metacore, and I think Merge was basically created by. Well, okay, there's a long history, and I forget which one it is. I'm really sorry. It's 2048 and Tens. Or 10, I think 10, I can't remember. And then one of them came first, but I forget. But I had this conversation recently, and everyone's like, "Yeah, everyone remembers the clone, basically, not the original," which is very true. But yeah, and then Grab Games kind of made that a bigger thing as well with Merge Dragons at one point. When I spoke to an industry expert during RovioCon and Slush Week, they said that they were concerned how Western studios could compete with Chinese companies. They said that Chinese companies have yet to crack match free, where regions like Turkey are dominating. Again, we mentioned Dream Games a couple times there, for example. And I think I want to say Good Games is a kind of emerging one with Match Villains. But they warned it's only a matter of time before Chinese publishers do crack that market. And someone else told me the same thing. And they said these companies will continue to grow and could kill the Western games industry over the next few years, they suggested. I feel like that's extreme because just because one's doing well doesn't mean another can't. But it is a concern, right? That how to compete on that level. So one of the advantages that Chinese companies have is their size, hundreds to thousands of employees across the top companies. And marketing in particular can see hundreds of staff supported by AI tech, building creatives. So one expert told me that one studio had like hundreds of people just building creatives. And I think that was more than were actually making the game in the marketing team. And they said that marketing is even more respected than game design, if you just want an idea. And so they have a lot of money to throw at user acquisition and creatives. And I think that is one of the reasons you're seeing that they are dominating the mobile games industry. Because what is the one thing we all know about it? It's not so much about innovation, though that I think that can have an impact, even if it's small little innovations. Which it's really, I know it feeds into UA, but the casual element of 4X strategy. But the whole industry is built off of user acquisition, right? And I'll round this out with, so I think what's changed over the past couple of years for Chinese companies and why people are talking about it. Chinese companies can build global hits from China, and there was obviously a period where there was a lot of investment overseas, and I think that's why we've seen companies like NetEase roll back internationally from investments in studios in the West. I think they just realized they don't really need to do that. They have like all that capacity at home. It probably costs less, and then some other reasons, I guess. And over the past couple of years, we've had Black Myth Wukong, Marvel Rivals, Where Winds Meet, just sort of broader, not just mobile. And then we've got Honor of King's World coming up. And then just to round this out, one advantage that Western studios do have, and this is something Deconstructional Funds Mishka Katkov mentioned at RovioCon, is that Western companies do have IP. And that is what Chinese companies often try to tap. So Marvel Rivals was an example there. Age of Empires has been used by Tencent. I think Harry Potter, Magic Awakened was used by NetEase, and a bunch of others. I think we'll see how much that matters in 5 years. I know IP is a good way to get your game marketed and more people interested, but I think because China's cracked user acquisition, I guess we'll see how much that matters in the Western mobile. Any thoughts on China, Asia dominance, Aaron? Other than what you've said already?
Yeah, other than what I've said. So you speaking about like IP stuff there has reminded me as well that in terms of the kind of potential blend of, I guess, Eastern development and Western IPs, and that this summer the government announced in China like a program to treat like foreign-funded studios as domestic titles if they're developed in Shanghai. I think it was in July. I'm not sure if it started then or was announced then, but it was certainly this summer. So obviously it's been on the mend, but we did have that period of kind of Chinese licenses being quite a tumultuous thing. So perhaps this is also going to be a sign of, in a way, more, even more successful Chinese games developers move their development to Shanghai, from other countries. Also, yeah, potentially just a continuation of, say, like Western IPs getting used by Chinese developers.
I think for me, I could be wrong here, but I think the China market, the problem is that I think publishers there don't feel the need to invest internationally into international companies as much as they maybe once did. But the problem is that new regulations and laws could come in at literally any moment. The past 10 years, I think, at least when I've been covering it, has proven that suddenly there could be license freezes. Suddenly there could be regulations around how much time children can spend on games, or there could be another tech crackdown, like randomly, CEOs suddenly disappearing. Anything could happen, and while it feels at any moment like, oh, maybe they're easing up on tech in general and games, but it could, honestly, it could just change on a dime. So I think Chinese companies are very much, one, they want their global international success, especially the top ones that have kind of peaked maybe currently in China. And two, it's so tremendously difficult for international companies to operate in China. And even if they're saying, oh, we'll treat it like a domestic game, it's like maybe you have to give up like your IP to a local partner who has a majority stake in that company. One thing that happened this year or last year? I think Unity basically left China, but its engine, I believe, has been forked and is now available in China. I can't remember the name of it. It's like Unity is in China, but it's a different name, a different team. That's the kind of the risks I think are involved from that side as well. So yeah, when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, oh, an interesting opportunity, but unless you have like a really strong partner, it's just, I don't think it's very, very difficult to find any success there.
Yeah, and also where you're saying about, basically anything can happen at any time. I think it was 2 Christmases ago, basically, like late December 23, China kind of casually decided, we might ban basically every mechanic that mobile games have. Like the daily login bonuses and the loot boxes and the encouragement to want to play the game regularly. And then suddenly, like 10% shares and stuff crashed, if I'm remembering rightly. And then in January, the government was like, oh, we're not going to do it, actually. And then everyone has to kind of recover again.
See, it can happen. That actually leads us on nicely to the next trend I was going to talk about, which is regulation. So the big ones, hopefully I can remember all these top of my head, but the big ones, obviously this year, were for the West, and the world, sorry, outside of China, was the kind of App Store being cracked open. So that long-running Epic v Apple case kind of came to a head, and the judge was so infuriated with Apple and Apple trying to do its own the EU really and just ignore kind of all rulings and say, oh no, this should be fine, right? Because it was gonna, I think the first ruling, if I remember correctly, everyone was celebrating. Yes, Epic's won the case, and then Apple was just like, cool, 27% fee on link outs. It's like, what? You didn't even do that before. What the hell? I guess you couldn't, but yeah, still, that's kind of crazy. And then later, yeah, the judge was furious, so cracked it open. You could do link outs for free. And just this past week or two, it's now been ruled, but they're still deciding that actually Apple can charge a reasonable commission on those link outs, on purchases made through link outs. So we'll see what that is. I believe that's going to be negotiated with the court. I wonder if Epic also gets to have its say. Which then brings us nicely to the Google Play stuff, where Google Play and Epic were kind of at war. And then it was all agreed, it was almost kind of fairly similar to what happened with Apple. And then Epic and Google came up with another arrangement that would roll out globally instead of just the US. And it would basically judge games by the way that they monetize, which is the most odd outcome possible that could be. There's going to be a hearing in January as a total guess. I think it's the 22nd, the 21st, something like that. There's going to be a hearing about that. The judge seemed very skeptical. There was just like, the only thing that's changed, I think they said, was you were fierce enemies and now you're best mates. So, and because those changes to the monetization, it was, what was the fees, Aaron? It was like 20%, I think.
Yeah, if you have like
plus 5%. Google's fee.
If there's an advantage basically in making that.
Yeah, and it was 10% if you didn't have that, I think, or less.
9 or 10, I think.
Yeah, so it was less. So it was ridiculous. So some of that's still rumbling on, but a lot of that came to a head this year, and so that's really kind of really interesting time for the industry. The UK's own rules will come out maybe next year. But obviously there'll be a lot of appeals by Apple. Although that difference with that is it's not a legal case, it's a regulatory thing. Digital Markets Act also kind of forcing kind of Apple and Google to open up their stores more. That's been kind of rumbling on because Apple has kept changing its rules, and the latest ones that are just hella confusing was reported that that the European Commission was going to accept these bizarre new rules about link outs and still charging fees for whatever. It ultimately was going to be a bit lower, but very, very confusing than it used to be. But actually, the European Commission hasn't come out yet. I wonder if it's because they're worried about Donald Trump in the US and the reaction that they'll have, because every time, no matter what administration's in, every time regulators do something around the world, they get very angry if it's against one of their tech companies. And this time it's because they'll probably just slap ridiculous tariffs, right? So the European Commission has been suspiciously quiet, I would say. We'll see if something comes out soon. And then I guess there've been, what else, Aaron? There've been some other things. So in Australia, just really random, but just in the last few weeks, the last week or two, there's a total social media ban. And so that was interesting. Total social media ban for children over 16, just to be clear. And then in the US, there's also, actions being taken against that kind of thing. And just in general, trying to protect children online, which I think is something we'll see more of around the world, if I was to predict, in 2026. And so while years ago people were saying to go back to China, but people are like, oh, these restrictions are crazy in China, how typical of China, all these regulations to protect children, etc. And it's like impossible markets are working. And then you start seeing that happen around the rest of the world. I thought that was quite
because we was it the Online Safety Act came in a few months ago here, and just to kind of springboard on more regulatory stuff. Obviously, there was like India banned the real money games, which was
absolutely
like out of nowhere.
That wiped billions off the market immediately.
And then they've recently changed kind of data protection law, which we kind of covered the impacts that could have for the game makers. The Digital Fairness Act as well. I guess we'll probably hear more about that next year. But yeah, certainly regulations are an emerging trend.
And actually, on the DFA, yeah, thanks, Aaron. Is that Ilkka Paananen had that open letter encouraging people to submit their thoughts to the European Commission, calling it crazy because it would impact the way that mobile games monetize kind of completely. And when you hear, I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and the general gist I get is people are angry about this legislation, and I've heard there's some kind of experts in the field of regulation, and they were saying like it was very unusual the way it was announced, this whole thing. So when they're asking for feedback, they announced it while everyone was in March at GDC. Perhaps one reason why people caught off guard, and they felt, it seems like a lot of people feel that there's more of a moral, slightly political bent to it rather than a practical, like, oh, we think this is actually affecting children. I mean, all these things are politics, really. It's interesting how angry the industry is, and I don't think the thing that gets me is I don't think anyone's willing to accept that maybe some sort of changes, or the industry should take a bit more responsibility. I'll be looking into this more. Like, I think there's surely a bit more place for self-regulation. Although, as there was at the Wigan Games event recently, I think people were like, actually, companies do self-regulate a lot, but it's in like a lot of different ways in different sectors that have been regulated. But games specifically, I don't think enough action is taken, and I don't think trade bodies make them accountable for their actions, basically, which I don't think helps anyone. Right, that was regulation, and then a couple other very quick things kind of wanted to go through. So the first thing I want to talk about was the transmedia trend that is kind of running through again this year that people are talking about. Over the last few years, we've had some big films and TV shows, like the Super Mario Brothers movie in 2023, $1.36 billion at the box office, very, very well. Super Mario Galaxy movie is coming out now on April 3rd, 2026. And we've got the Legend of Zelda movie coming up. We've had a Minecraft movie. We've got the new Angry Birds movie coming out. I think it's next year. We've had Five Nights at Freddy's 2 just come out. A Minecraft movie 2, I think, has already been greenlit. A new Sonic the Hedgehog movie has already been greenlit.
Yeah, there's 2 Sonic films coming.
That's 2. Crazy. And that, and The Last of Us, I think season 2, I think was this year. I think there's a new Twisted Metal series maybe that came out. There's just a lot going on in that space, and it's really just interesting to see. Now, how worth it is it, and for who? So, I think for movie studios, production companies, I guess it's potentially great for them because they're looking for something outside probably of the superhero space, which I think it's not died, but it is just not as popular as it used to be, right? And so they're looking for other IPs as well as established audiences, so that it looks pretty good. For games companies, what are the benefits? I guess it's how you look at it, I guess, but one of the benefits obviously is, oh, hey, it's a film now. You can potentially kind of grab new audiences and maybe they'll buy the games. And while there's data that comes out that suggests that does happen, like how much of the upshot from a film or TV show coming out really matters. Like if you're generating, like it's not nothing, but if you generate a few $100,000 from your game because the film came out, and then that's kind of it. Like if that was the jump you're looking for, these films cost so much money to make, tens of millions, 100 million. This a few 100,000 doesn't really matter. Even a couple million probably wouldn't really matter at that point. So I guess it's just audience engagement and how much money do you make from that licensing deal, which I think is quite an interesting thing to look at. And we'll obviously be looking at that, the Transmedia Summit at Pocket Gamer Connects London. That'll be on January 20th. We've got Rovio there, we've got the BBC there, and we've got a bunch of really cool people and companies at the show. Any thoughts on Transmedia, Aaron?
Mainly, I'm excited for the Zelda movie. That's 27, though, a little bit more of a wait for that one.
Yes.
So no, because they released some stills, I guess, of the actors, like the Link and Zelda, and that's there's a little bit of hype bubbling away cautiously now. And it's English cast, being filmed in New Zealand. That can be a good combination with certain fantasy franchises. Not saying it will be the next Lord of the Rings, but who knows? Maybe in 2 years' time we'll be saying about how this has pioneered a new trend. I guess more generally, as you say, it's certainly become more of a thing. Whether it's just being a Pokemon fan, but to me it felt like game movies had kind of died away until like Detective Pikachu, and then Sonic followed like the following year. And since then, there just seems to be this kind of almost constant stream of new game spin-offs into TV shows or movies. Not saying it's necessarily because of Detective Pikachu or Sonic, although Sonic did very well. But, it's certainly become more of a thing, I think.
I would say those films definitely helped. I think you're right. If you see examples of success, then it breeds more of that, right? Other companies, whether it's the games companies or the film companies, then reaching out, right? It's like, oh, there's something here. Let's see how the most popular games IPs do, or which ones can we adapt the best. Doesn't always work. You've got Assassin's Creed film, you've got Borderlands films that didn't really do very well. The Uncharted film was very okay. Yeah, it doesn't always work out, but I think it does breed a bit more of that. I wanted to say one more thing on that, which I nearly forgot, was I saw a really interesting post from Philip Black, and he actually made a good point that, again, it was that incremental revenue uplift from a film. Like, how much is it worth it? But he says everyone ignores, again, I hate saying, sorry, when I say sorry after I say everyone, it's because it's that stupid thing where people go, everyone said this. It's like, not everyone said that. A couple people you saw said it, and now you've attributed it to them. So, figuratively, but yeah, not even that really, is it? So he just pointed out that while some people are like, oh, the amazing world of transmedia is all going great, it's just like, well, actually, that incremental revenue doesn't matter. And then secondly, like if you were to look at anime in Japan, and you mentioned Pokemon there, like it's already been done, right? Pokemon's a tremendous success. It was a game that launched how many? Like 1,000 movies.
Yeah, I think it's 23, 24, something like that.
Exactly, 1,000. And then that did that. There's other examples. I mean, it's a slightly different way it happened. Uma Musume. I think it was Uma Musume. I think it came out as an anime first, but I think it was conceived as a game and an anime the same time, but the game took longer to come out, I think, if I remember right. And then I think that there's other examples as well. So that is kind of what actually happened, and that's a really interesting case study that I think people ignore because I guess Western versus Japan. But I thought that was really interesting.
And I guess just as an extra point, it kind of, in a way, is maybe an evolution of, you used to get TV shows that existed purely to try and sell toys.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure, like Thundercats as an example. Obviously, these are all before my time, but yeah. And obviously, people found these things through the TV shows. Bakugan is an example that I kind of grew up with. So I thought the TV show was great, and then that made me go and buy the toys. And then it was weird growing up and realising that this great kids' TV show, that's more fun than the toys, existed to sell the toys, like it wasn't the other way around.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess like games have done a similar thing in a way.
That's a really interesting point. It's like even Star Wars, they made a tremendous amount of money, but like I'm pretty sure, someone correct me, that actually they made most of their money through like toys, another sort of merchandise. Because obviously there was many years gaps between a lot of the films. But yeah, that was like actually kind of became the main money driver. Again, really interesting. So a couple other quick trends. So AI was obviously one of the big ones this year. Everyone's talking about particularly generative AI in particular. There's been a lot of controversy around it. And so there's like outrage sometimes when you hear about. So Arc Raiders was one example. And I think Call of Duty Black Ops 7 was the other example of people caught wind. Oh, there's like some AI assets used here. So I think Call of Duty, I think it was AI assets or assets in the game. And then with Arc Raiders, it was some of the voice acting that's AI generated. Some consumers are getting like very angry about that, and it's reported a lot in the media. And then so sometimes companies have to come out and defend that, why they do it. And then when you talk to people in the industry, I think it's a bit of a mix of some people are still trying to wait for the use cases, but I think a lot are actually already finding the use cases, whether that is in pre-production or production, or we talked about earlier, user acquisition, making creatives kind of a really big game changer for that. And at PGC, we've heard like a lot of experts, Claire Zane talked about it, kind of how useful user acquisition is. Sorry, how useful generative AI is for creating, for making creators for UA. Tay Lanserick on 2.5 Games talks about that a lot. So it is making a big impact, and I think some people are open about it, like Krafton, hugely open about what they want to do with AI. They have been for a long time. You were the one that caught that, Aaron, and no one was talking about it. Like this was a year or two ago when they were saying, "Oh, we want to replace voice actors and stuff." It's like, what the fuck? What? You're just being open with this? Wow.
So they were like, "Oh, the AI can do a better range of emotion and stuff." So that's really a harsh thing to say.
And then they're basically saying they want to replace developers now. And then I think it's Krafton as well now that they've basically got an open, like, you can resign, like voluntary resignation process. If you don't want to get on board with this AI, you can voluntarily resign and you get like a package to leave. They're so all in on it. It's crazy. But they're open about it and how they're using it in production development. And I think a lot of other companies, even when they're not talking about it or being open about it, they're using it. Is the ultimate fact of the matter. Now, obviously, consumers, it's up to them. They'll vote with their feet how they feel about it. And so I guess if it becomes asset creation, how that was made, and if you're costing jobs, people might get concerned about it. But the fact of the matter is that companies are using it. Even EA signed a deal with, I forget the company's name now, but they signed a big AI deal as well to like at least explore it. It's here already, and this year was a big year. And I think we'll just see more of it next year. It's not AI will make your games. It's not that, but it will. If I was to predict, because you always get people saying, you can do more with what you've got. Through that, I think a lot of people. Sorry, through that, I think there are some executives that will see like, yeah, we can just lay off a bunch of people now and make more money and make smaller games. Sorry, make bigger games for smaller teams. But we'll see. We'll see how that rolls out. And then, any thoughts on AI, Aaron?
I think you've covered all the main things. I guess even outside of games, I feel like this year I've just encountered a lot more people who are just using it day to day, like who use ChatGPT rather than like Google something. Even if you do Google something, you get the Google AI result at the top now, which I think a lot of people just read that. So I think that's maybe acclimatizing people to it anyway, but may then have a knock-on effect for games. Hearing that they're using AI, if people are using it themselves anyway, maybe won't be such a red flag in a year or so.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, like a lot of my friends use ChatGPT. A couple have subscriptions, and we used it to organise we're going to holiday to Canada next year. And one of the ways we helped organise that was one of my friends was using ChatGPT. I don't trust it, so I was like, Googling, looking it up myself. But I feel like that the problem with AI is it just can be very inaccurate. Like my sister used it when she was traveling, and it just started making up locations. It was like, do this, do that, and then you look up, you actually look it up. It's like it doesn't exist. So there's always that risk. But then I also sound very old saying, I don't want to use it, etc. In some form, I think a lot of the companies and tools that exist now will go away, but in some form, like this technology will probably change like some of the way you work, whether you like it or not, really. I have a lot of disagreements about AI. I think the total theft of humanity's history of copyrighted materials is insane that has been allowed with no remediation. But fine, I guess it's happened now, annoyingly. And it's been allowed.
Yeah,
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
But
But I
that's
don't
like a
mean
different. But
this.
that's
I was just going to say, yeah, I don't mean this to like toot my own horn either. But occasionally, I've tried to look something up to do with something I've written. Like I'll want to check, one of the articles that we've got on the site. So I'll Google, some keywords to bring that result up, and then obviously it gives me the AI overview, and I have to scroll down to our article. And it's like the AI overview basically looks like I wrote it because like we are the source that it's used, and it's like, but I didn't write that. It's just the
it's
AI
awful.
basically.
We get nothing from that. Right?
Yeah.
We get no benefit from that. That's just to Google's own benefit. Crazy. All right, but some of that is like different from the use that studios will use. So, like studios could use generative AI because they'll be worried about the legal aspects as well because that's not been solved. So they can use this tech internally on their own art assets, on their own creatives, etc. Right? So where do people get angry and not angry in that scenario? Right? Like I wouldn't necessarily complain about using those assets, but then if you're replacing jobs, especially in voice acting, like it feels wrong. So yeah, that's one that'll rumble again next year, even more so. And then the last quick few, non-gaming's rise. Everyone's talking about it. We're going to do the Apps Business Summit at Pocket Gamer Connects London. That'll be on January 19th. So Duolingo's the big example there. Getting into gamification, as it were, turning into a learning platform. So it's not just language now. They're doing like chess, for example, music. So it's really interesting, just using kind of the techniques that games developers have been using for a long time and putting that into non-gaming. Mishka Kakrov said it's basically like the return. Like if you're just looking to exit a company, eventually, like the return you get from non-gaming currently is much greater than gaming. Just the way it is, I guess. M&A, it's been another big year for M&A. Obviously, the whole Netflix Warner Brothers thing is kind of crazy at the moment. We'll see how that goes. But even bigger for games specifically is obviously the Saudi-led takeover of EA for $55 billion and private equity's involvement in that as well. Presumably that will go through, but we'll see. We don't know. And yeah, the Netflix Warner thing, I guess, will run into the new year of Paramount bidding as well. And the other thing I just wanted to quickly point out was web gaming. So last year it was like a big thing, especially because of Telegram mini games. It was more like HTML5. This year, not really hearing so much about it. I feel like that's faltered a bit in terms of growth, at least, and it doesn't feel like it had the potential that necessarily people were thinking it had last year. There's not as much buzz around it. Sometimes that just means the hype's gone. People are just hard at work, right? Could be the case, but I think it's a bit more challenging because I think, in my personal opinion, the challenge is really ultimately the App Store and Google Play, where people go to get stuff. And that's a fixed marketplace. Whereas to get someone to go randomly on the web and get your thing is a very difficult challenge. Right, any other trends? Sort of mentioned earlier, direct-to-consumer web shops, that's very big. And actually we saw in the last quarter that direct-to-consumer revenue is actually growing quite substantially. I think in part off the back of App Store being cracked open. But that's another kind of trend that was there last year. One of those trends that will be every year, really, getting bigger. We'll see what the App Store does with commission next year in the US, and if the Google Play Epic thing goes through. Maybe things won't be quite as rosy, but obviously publishers have done very well at leading players away from the store anyway, regardless. Right, so yeah, that brings us to the end of the week in mobile games, the year in mobile games, I guess, this week. Nice festive episode. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Aaron, for being on the podcast this year. I think you said 77 episodes.
Yeah, this is episode 77, which is a nice number. It's not exactly a milestone, but there's some nice sibilance there.
Yes. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to carrying on. Hopefully, I think this January was a bit of a rocky start. Hopefully we'll have a better one in 2026.
Yes, my year has been kind of crazy. For anyone that knows me, more or less dramatic in 2026. And yeah, hopefully I won't be ill suddenly for the conference. Looking forward to that. I'm going to kick it off with a fireside chat with Akin Babi-Yagit. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So yeah, please do come along to PGC London. Be a great show. Right, everyone. Aaron, Merry Christmas. Have a great New Year. We'll see you again in the new year. And have a good one. Enjoy the holidays. Goodbye.
Bye.